There's just so much more to hear.
Download our podcasts at DubaiI1038.com.
The Agenda with Tom Urquhart
On Dubai Eye 103.8.
It's time to have your say.
So the question this morning, and it is a good morning to one and all right here on The Agenda, broadcasting live between now and 11 o'clock. This is your morning phone-in. Lines are live as we speak, so do pick up the phone and give us a call on 04-423-1010, or you can text us on 4001. What are we asking this morning? A couple of questions of you, please. How environmentally friendly do you think that electrical cars will be? Seems like they are, well, very much upon us, and that's for sure, because another 500 were announced yesterday. The environment-friendly hybrid vehicles will be joining the RTA fleet, who have very much thrown their support behind going electric sooner rather than later. So, would you do the same? Would you buy an electrical vehicle? Have you already signed up for an electrical vehicle? Do you believe they'll really make a positive impact on the environment? What are the pros and cons? What concerns do you have? Or do you prefer the sound, the feel of a gas guzzler over an EV? To have with us. You're with the Agenda right here on Dubai 103.8, as I said, with you through till 11 o'clock this morning. The Agenda is your morning phone-in. It's your morning debate show. It's your opportunity to air your opinions, and opinions are what counts. So please do share them with us by texting them to us.
Want to shape the conversation? Join in the debate?
Text Tom on 4001.
Or have your say via the free app. Help set the agenda
On Dubai Eye 103.8.
Time for Fast and I to set that agenda as to why we are discussing this today. Well, yesterday, if you were listening to the paper review, you would have heard that we discussed the story, that the fact that the RTA has endorsed a contract for adding 554 environment-friendly hybrid vehicles to its fleet as part of the initiative to reduce carbon emissions from the taxi sector by 2%. It's part of a bigger plan for converting 50% of Dubai taxi cabs into hybrid vehicles by 2021. Ambitious or realistic? Your thoughts, text them to us. This led to an interesting debate about electrical vehicles and the real impact they would have on the environment, a topic that certainly got a lot of you talking on social media, on our text message system, and on Facebook. So what we know is that locally electric or hybrid vehicles, as we're seeing now, will have 10% of the new vehicle share in Dubai in just the next 4 years, as the Emirates sets new targets in green mobility, whilst globally by 2035 they are expected to make up 90% of all vehicles as the use of clean energy becomes mainstream. Obviously, the efforts of Tesla are well documented. I don't need to ask you about that, do I, Vesta?
That's right, Tom. As we all know, the showroom opened up on Sheikh Zayed Road a couple of months ago now, and it is all part of the UAE and the region's really initiative, as you say, targets in green mobility. They've also struck a deal with the RTA to provide 200 electrical vehicles fitted with components of autonomous driving technologies to help support those targets. Meanwhile, though, we've also seen in this space, to make it more affordable for residents to adopt this new sort of zero carbon emission clean technology, we've seen incentive programs. It was launched in May by the Ministry of Energy and really encourages motorists to buy these electrical vehicles through green bank loans, green insurance, attractive EV prices, green registration vehicles. It's sort of a regional initiative, but whether this is actually working and residents are adopting this technology is another story, because it is expensive.
Let's get your thoughts. How do you feel about EVs? Would you buy one? What concerns do you have? And do you think they really will make an impact on the environment in the long term? Residents may be keen to buy electric cars. Many are, though, still concerned. And text messages coming in about that as we speak. Why are they concerned? High price, charging stations available, batteries themselves, just how green are the batteries that are being used, and here, I suppose, in the region, how will the batteries themselves be able to cope with the heat? And talking of the heat, how will electric cars be able to deal with the heat that you have to drive in here during the summer months? Will air conditioning be on a par, as you'd find is a gas guzzler? Plus, the disposal of batteries has also caused concern, as has the whole environmental question, the environmental offset of using more electricity. So do send us your thoughts, please. As I said, please text them through to us on 4001. Give us a call on 04423 1010. We're going to be talking to a number of experts in the field and also those that have made the commitment to green or going electric already. And we've spoken to one already, Richard Dean.
Yes, indeed. I mean, Richard is very passionate about electric cars, and honestly, so am I. I think they are the future. As I was saying yesterday, in about 3 to 5 years, we're probably going to see them all over the roads here in the UAE. It is something that people feel passionate about, but there are many barriers to entry, as you've just mentioned, Tom. And it's that debate as to whether now is the right time to invest in them, or whether we should wait a couple of years until the infrastructure is there and the price of those cars come down a little bit.
Not wanting to be too dramatic, but is this the end of the age of the internal combustion engine? Is that in sight? Small signs everywhere. Shift to hybrid vehicles already underway among many manufacturers. We spoke yesterday about the fact that Volvo said that as of 2019, I think it was, or no, 2018, which is next year, they're converting all of their production will be hybrid cars, either hybrid or all electric as well. They will make no purely petrol car engines after 2019. In fact, the British government itself expects that all electric future to arrive by 2014, and Tesla has just started selling its first electric car aimed squarely at the middle classes, the Tesla 3, which goes at quite a hefty pay point.
Yeah, it's not cheap, as we all know. These
about
cars,
35 grand in the US, which is about what here?
Yeah, or over 100,000 dirhams.
Right.
It's between 100,000 and 300,000, depending on the car that you buy and the specs that you take. So, it's not a kind of affordable car for most residents here. It is on the higher end. If you can afford it, great. But for most of us, it doesn't really fall in that price range.
The Tesla 3, as we said, has been signed up. Over 500,000 people have put down small deposits already towards one. Several thousand have already taken delivery. Company Tesla hopes to sell 500,000 more next year. This is a remarkable figure for a machine with a fairly short range and a very limited number of specialist charging stations. So the change is upon us. Are you going to accept that change with open arms? Or are you concerned? Rosalind is concerned. She's quick off the bat this morning. She's texted on 4001 saying vulnerability to cyber attack. No algorithmic transparency or accountability. Potential weapons of mass destruction. Thank you very much indeed for some thoughts there. I'm taking it, Rosalind, that you're not a fan of the electric conversion. We'll wait and see.
Loads of texts already coming in, as you say, Tom. Thomas says EVs are definitely better for the environment. The problem here is that cars and fuel are cheap, and even with the incentives, EVs are still expensive. And Danny saying, I'd like to buy an electrical car, but I'm going to wait until there are more options on the market to bring the price down. I do worry a bit that the batteries won't cope in the summer heat. We will have experts on a little bit later in the show looking at this issue of the batteries. What happens, when you're disposing the battery in the heat? We will get those answers, bring them to you a little bit later.
Thanks very much indeed to Ken. He's also texted on 4001 saying, I have just moved here to the UAE. I've driven an electric car for 3 years now, and I'll never go back to petrol guzzling and black smoking, fuming monsters called combustion engine cars. It should have been electric cars right from the beginning, as they started before the petrol cars came in, but some unscrupulous oil people killed all the electric cars in the 70s and the 80s. As to my ride, no noise, no vibrations. The music sounds so pure in it. It's a veritable delight to drive, and it is autonomous as well, and it drives itself. I simply sit and look at the world outside. Can't wait to get back to it. That's from Ken, who's a new addition here to the UAE. Looking forward to getting back to his electric.
Let's go to the lines now, Tom, and speak to Ian Beatty, General Manager at Autodata. Good morning, Ian.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
We're great. Thank you for joining us on the line this morning. We've got so many questions around electrical vehicles coming in, and we had to talk to you this morning. First of all, let's talk about the adoption of EVs in the region. Is it on the rise, especially with Tesla moving into the region?
Yeah, I think Tesla's had a big impact, and I think it's had a bigger impact than I thought it was going to have originally. In all fairness, I had some doubts about the compatibility with the super hot climate. Which is obviously one thing that we need to consider when any vehicle is imported into the GCC in this part of the world. They're great looking, drive fantastic, super quick. Who wouldn't want one? The only thing is, I think that for most people, they're out of the price range at the moment.
Your colleague Bill once said to us, Bill Carter, he said, in reality, we have no choice as the petrol engine will be dead in 10 to 15 years. Would you agree with that, Ian?
If I disagree with Bill Carter on air, then I think my future's done. No, but all joking apart, absolutely right. There's no doubt about it. 10 or 15 years, combustion engine will be gone. Now, this isn't necessarily. I was talking to somebody about this morning. As I mentioned, we were going to be having a chat, and this isn't necessarily consumer driven. This is green, politically driven. So we've got a push from politics that electric is best and green is best, but is that being absolutely driven by the consumer, especially in this part of the world? This part of the world is a gas guzzling 4x4 excuse the term, Mecca, as it were.
Talk to me about the challenges that you predict, Ian, with regards to the take-up of electric across the board, specifically here in the UAE. I mean, we were talking about a mindset here. Is this something that is going to happen? It's only a matter of time that people need to come around to it?
Yeah, I think it will. I think as more and more, electric vehicles are accessible, and especially the smaller versions, the more affordable versions, they've got to be more accessible to the general consumer and more affordable. What incentives can we put in place that are going to encourage somebody to buy an electric vehicle? And if I give you an example, if you buy a hybrid in Jordan, for example, there's zero tax. If you buy a combustion engine, it's 90% tax. So that's a massive incentive to buy a hybrid. But the taxation here is extremely low. I mean, we're only going to 5% VAT. So where else can we actually incentivise a consumer, to buy an electric vehicle? Reduce registration fees, maybe no SALIC. Hey, that would be a good one. And are they going to be cheaper to maintain? And do you have to maintain them more often or less often? I think these are some of the questions that need to be answered.
And in terms of that incentivisation of the change as well, given the fact that fuel gas is relatively cheap in a global market here in the UAE, is that something as well that will prevent people from changing?
Definitely, and the love of the roar of the engine. One of my previous cars was a Mustang GT California Special. You put that in sport and you put your foot down. There's not many sounds like it. And there's the consumer here. Are a 4x4, a gas guzzling petrol driven consumer. And it is about education of why we should go green, but more importantly, having that balance of the consumer demand and the political push.
It will take some time for us to adopt that, Ian. What about the concerns around batteries, how they'll cope in the heat here and the disposal issue? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think any vehicle that's imported to any super hot country would be tested to extremes. And there's another thing also that we have to remember, that if any manufacturer is thinking of importing a vehicle into a super hot country, there are many specification differences, and Bill and I have mentioned this on various shows that we've done for you guys. And we're talking about cooling systems, filtration systems, electrical systems, tyre ratings, the tyres themselves. So it's not particularly just about the battery; it's about the other specification differences that can be highly expensive. Which means that where does the price point hit? That's the question. Who can afford to buy an electric vehicle?
Good questions. Ian, just a very quick question before we let you go, because we're running a little bit late. Is hybrid a better option? I mean, we've seen that the RTA has adopted this 554 vehicles. Is this the better option at the moment for residents here?
Personally, I think absolutely 100%. Let's do it. I think it should be anything. Baby steps. Let's walk before we can run. And I think the Dubai government done exactly the right thing. More hybrids, get people used to it, and then we can take the next step to fully electric.
Interesting times, and Ian, you're at the cut-off, that's for sure. Thanks very much indeed for your time and your insight today. Have yourself a wonderful day.
And you, thank you very much.
Thanks to Ian Beatty there, General Manager of Autodata here in the region, giving us his professional opinion, an automotive industry perspective. And just as Ian was saying there, let's get our definitions right, as people were saying out there. The definition and the differentiation between electric vehicles, which are dependent on electric, all electric, and as Ian was saying at the end there, hybrid vehicles, which are a mix of both fuel and, of course, electricities, and have limited emissions. Thanks very much indeed to Ian for those.
The Agenda
On Dubai Eye 103.8.
Stay one step ahead.
Keep coming in, 4001. We're asking you about your thoughts on all things electric cars. Are they the future? Are they something that you'd like to see more of? And, apart from talking about it and paying it lip service, would you commit and invest in an electric car? Because after all, it is going to be a significant investment.
Yes, it is. I mean, we've worked it out. It's between 100,000 and 300,000 for a Tesla, for instance, depending on the spec of the car that you buy, which is a substantial investment. And a lot of people have bought them already, obviously, because over the long term, they see the benefit of that. So, hopefully a car will come out in the future that's a little bit more accessible for most residents here in order for them to adopt this technology.
Let's get to a few of your thoughts. This one's from Dom. Talking of costs, though, I mean, you might talk about the initial costs of these vehicles, specifically electric vehicles. Long term, you could well be saving money. Again, let's just make that differentiation. Hybrid is the halfway house, if you like. Hybrid uses electricity, but it also uses fossil fuels, gas, be that gasoline or diesel. But it does lower the emissions of the car and makes it more environmentally friendly than an all-out gas guzzler. This one from Dom saying, "Hi Tom, I had my first hybrid experience this summer and absolutely loved it. Hired a Toyota CHR with Hertz. Apart from the unbelievably quiet engine, you wouldn't know it was on. What stands out is the fuel efficiency. In 3 weeks, I only spent around £40 sterling, which is 200 dirhams or so these days. Prices are high. I checked online, and this model is around 21 to 28,000 pounds sterling. But if you factor in fuel saving, it's well worth considering." Cheers, Dom.
Simon saying, if you care about the environment and the world your children will live in, then you'll opt for a car that's most fuel and eco-friendly. And Rami saying, incentivizing people is a good idea, but there are still a few other barriers that need to be overcome before this option is fully environmentally friendly.
Thanks very much indeed to whoever sent this one. Most cars are in transit from the manufacturer to the dealer, where they're parked at depots, at ports. This can be months. How does this impact EVs, batteries? Logistics is going to be the main issue. Thanks for that opinion. No name with it.
And Ashish saying, infrastructure is getting better here, but not the point where I feel that it's worth buying an EV right now. I admire the early adopters and the struggles they've had to face so far.
How can government wield stick or carrot? Excise tax, sin tax, air pollution tax, noise tax. What about retraining of mechanics as well? Asks one of our listeners this morning, which brings up a very good point. Yeah, in terms of the impact it's going to have on the industry. I mean, what's they say about electric cars? That they've got 20 working components as opposed to 350 or whatever in a normal internal combustion engine, and getting them fixed is an industry in its own right, etc. Is it going to have a massive impact on mechanics, on garages, on servicing of cars? How's that going to happen?
Yeah, very good point. If you work in the automotive industry, we'd love your insights on this one. How do you think EVs will impact the industry that you work in?
I'd like to come over to you if that's all right.
Yeah.
Serena, is that okay?
Yes.
Is that okay? Good
It's always okay.
You're sounding good today. You're
Oh,
sounding.
thanks.
Yeah, you feeling a bit better?
I am feeling a bit
Good,
better.
that's
Thank
good
you.
to hear. Couple more days and
You want something, don't you?
No, not at all.
Okay, just
Well, I
the
do. I want the
news.
news headlines.
There's just so much more to hear.
Download our podcasts at DubaiEye1038.com.
The Agenda with Tom Urquhart.
On Dubai Eye 103.8.
Weekdays from 9 a.m. Stay one step ahead.
Keep text coming in 4001. This one from Gelly out there. Gelly saying the grid just can't take millions of cars being charged if everyone went over to electric cars tomorrow. This issue will not be resolved in 5 or probably even 10 years. Thanks also to Jimmy, who's texted in saying the batteries will never be cheap and they will be leased like the leaves, or the cost of the vehicle will be a lot, just like we're seeing with Tesla. Thanks for that one.
Tom, let's go to the lines now and speak to Salman. Good morning, Salman.
Hi, good morning.
How are you doing?
Not too bad at all.
What are your thoughts on electrical vehicles and specifically the effect it might have on our usage of electricity here?
Yes, one of the biggest topic is discussed whether electrical cars are really zero emission or not. And obviously, the people who want to talk against that will talk about how dirty power production is from coal. And so if we look at an infrastructure like the United Arab Emirates, where we are basically a gas-fired power plant supply, on that basis, I have a number of studies which I can share with you or anybody else who's interested, that it's almost 50% of what it causes for a gasoline engine versus an electric engine. And I'll not go into numbers unless you're interested, but take a simple example. When you are at the red light, your gasoline engine, thousands and thousands of cars is standing there, are still pumping out CO2, whereas an electrical car is absolutely zero emission. If you just think about when you go for your oil change, in an electrical car, that's not even applicable. There is no gasoline engine. There is no oil change. So the whole environmental footprint for a gasoline engine car versus an electric car is totally different. Think about the fuel transportation, just up to your petrol pumps. You know, you see all these tankers running around the city, bringing fuel to different petrol stations. Electrical cars don't need any of that. It's through electrical cables, and that's just one-off. And finally, if even you say everything was equal, that the total of gasoline engine and electric car have the same carbon footprint, as a minimum, logically, if you think about it, we are taking all this pollution away from the city centers, away to a power plant, which is at least 5 or 6 kilometers away. So if nothing else wins, that alone, if you live in an apartment building in Manhattan and all these cars are going underneath you, under your apartment and emitting all this CO2, you are in the middle of it. Right? Just imagine if these are all electric cars and there's somewhere else, 3-4 kilometers away, a power plant, even if it's exactly the carbon footprint, same carbon footprint, people are better off with electrical cars. That's my take on that.
But some of the naysayers out there, the critics, will turn around and say that the lithium that is used to power the batteries, the mining of that lithium in the initial place, but also the disposal of those batteries is also going to have an impact. Are you saying that impact will be less than the impact we're having already?
Well, you have to have a look at a proper study that was carried out. And I have one in my hand, which was carried out for California, because it's a mixed bag of, they have coal-fired, something like 30%, they have hydropower, they have geothermal, all that, versus electric car, or from, cradle to the grave. And we are not even talking about military protection, which all these oil installation requires. So, it's a much, much bigger party when you just think about the logistics. Yes, lithium batteries are there, but the way the technology is moving, it's just a matter of time. You will get better and better at all these things. But with gasoline, the logistics alone is a killer. And the very fact that you are breathing in the middle of this, imagine the power station, you are distributing it across the city. So just from that point of view, it's a big no-no. And people talk about lithium battery. Do you change oil more often in your car, or do you change batteries in your car more often? And just look at the volumes. I'm just talking very at a surface level, but if you dip deeper, you will see how often did your car change the oil. And have you even stopped to consider where all this refuse, all this waste oil is going to? If you think about the impact of that versus lithium battery, which is once in 3 years' time, it's chalk and cheese.
You put forward a very good argument. You sound passionate about this. You sound like you're an advocate of. Last question from me, Salman. Have you already bought an electric car? Have you signed up? Will you buy one?
I am waiting for the new Tesla, which is supposed to be at half the price of what the present models are. But I am talking to a number of people to put solar panels on top of my house.
Right.
And so that's unfortunately, as a UAE national, I was told by my consultant that the payback period will be much longer for you because of the tariff you are paying. So, that's another thing for the policymakers to think about. It's an interesting concept. I'm, not complaining too much, but more incentivize putting the solar panels on our rooftops. That should come even before the cars come in. The other part is if you have solar panels on top of your roofs in your houses, especially in villas, imagine people are talking about that this can export power back to the grid. I'm saying if you have an electrical car parked in your garage, then this whole argument that it's consuming the power produced by the power plant goes away because your own solar panels are charging your own car.
Okay.
And for me, it's a little bit into the future, but we are already there. We're already there. We just need to all take this one step further, and we will be in this better world we all keep talking about.
Some sensible thoughts there from Salman. Salman, thanks so much indeed for contributing to the show this morning. All the best.
Thank you.
Our thanks to Salman there for giving us his opinions. He's an advocate of. Are you? Or are you just not convinced? Please do send us your thoughts.
The Agenda with Tom Urquhart.
On Dubai Eye 103.8.
Weekdays from 9 a.m. Stay one step ahead.
Text message from Colin saying, first, the battery packs in EVs don't have to be recycled. Once they are no longer suitable for cars, they can simply be repurposed as in-home or commercial battery packs, a la Tesla, Powerwall or Powerpack. Colin, thank you for that one.
No name on this one. You might save in the long run, but the initial cost of the car is expensive. And Adam's saying, if we want to see a real change in the environment, we need to encourage people to live more environmentally friendly. There needs to be a dirty tax, says Adam, making gas guzzlers more expensive and increasing the fuel price.
Faraz been in touch as well, saying the world will pay a very high price for all the power stations required to produce the enormous amount of electricity required for the millions and millions of cars to be manufactured and used in this way. At the same time as governments are promoting this form of transport, they're also advocating that we all use less electricity. Something doesn't make add up. It seems crazy to me. Thanks very much indeed, Faraz. Let's go to the line and let's introduce Ahmed to the show. Ahmed joins us live on line 2. Morning, Ahmed.
Good morning.
Let's just follow on from that point there about the whole concept of the amount of electricity that's going to be used. Is that something you concur with?
Yes, to some extent I can, because at the end of the day, let's look at UAE for an example. UAE has the UAE energy strategy is to have, I think, 25% of the total energy consumed, or let's say generated, to be from renewable resources by 2030. So, and maybe I think they want to go up to about 70% by 2050. So there's still a long time before a lot of that power generation is going to be done using renewable resources. So if we're starting to use electric cars today, and we make that across the board, we're still the car won't be emitting, but the power generated from the power stations will be emitting emissions, because it's pretty much predominantly burning fossil fuels. So electric cars is the future, but we need to look at the wider spectrum about everything from the kind of the carbon footprint of producing electric vehicles, including the materials needed to source the batteries, all the way to the power. Where's the power coming from that's charging each single electric vehicle?
It's an interesting debate, isn't it, Ahmed? And we just spoke to Salman a few minutes ago who kind of addressed that, saying, yes, it is an issue, but basically what's happening is we're taking away the carbon dioxide in cities and the pollution we're facing here and moving it at least away to power plants. So at least cities will become cleaner in the long run. Yes, you do offset it, but, there are positive outcomes to driving electrical cars when you live in a city.
Oh, I definitely, as I said before, I do believe electric vehicles are the future. We just need to be not so naive about thinking that just buying a Tesla or any other electric vehicle solves the problem. Because again, there's a whole question about the carbon footprint of the car, and there's a other question about where's that power being generated from. And you actually need to think about it. If you look at Dubai, where's the power stations? If I'm not mistaken, there's one in Jebel Ali, which is right at the fringes of Marina and other areas in Dubai. So maybe the power station used to be far away a long time ago, but at the rate at which Dubai in particular grows, we can quickly catch up to these power stations.
You raise a really interesting point, because this time of the year it's very we notice every time at this time of the year, because of the surge with air conditioning, not so much in Dubai but certainly in other parts of the Emirates, there is a real pressure on the electricity grid, and outages of power is something that some residents have to deal with. This is just going to add to those outages, isn't it?
Precisely. I come from Bahrain, and up until recently, we used to have chronic issues with the power cuts in Bahrain, maybe let's say more than 5-6 years ago, and in the summer. And if you're thinking about now, you're converting, instead of all those people using petrol, they're going to be using electricity, then you need a lot more power. So there needs to be a lot more consideration, even to the fact that I think, the conversation yesterday was, if you live in an apartment block, how are you going to have to make sure that you have enough electrical connections to do these power charging stations in each slot? And then how is that going to be charged? Is the building owner going to front your costs? No, I'm sure not. There's already solutions out there where you can have them. It's almost you pay by credit card, but it's also you need to retrofit a lot of buildings, a lot of parking areas to be doing the charging. And you need to make sure that the charging, Tesla, I think they say that you can do an 80 to 90% charge within an hour. Yeah. It's not 100%. That's still, an hour is much longer than, say, 3-4 minutes if you're doing it at a petrol station. So we need to also shift our mindset. It needs a lot of consideration. We're going towards the right direction, but there needs to be a lot of investments into that, and actually money can be made out of it, but we need to just, look at the bigger picture.
Good points, well made, Ahmed. As always, thanks so much indeed for your input in the show this morning.
You're welcome. Anytime. Thank you very much.
Big thanks to Ahmed there for giving us his thoughts.
There's just so much more to hear.
Download our podcasts at DubaiI1038.com.
Right, well, you know the score. Set the agenda a little bit earlier. You've been inundating us with your thoughts ever since then. We are having this conversation because the RTA has endorsed a contract for adding another 554 environment-friendly hybrid vehicles to its fleet. This is part of an ongoing initiative to reduce carbon emissions from the taxi sector by 2%. It's also part of the bigger plan for converting 50% of Dubai taxi cabs into hybrid vehicles by 2021. That's hybrid, so that shares fossil fuels with electrical fossil fuels to be more environmentally friendly, but we're also talking about taking it a bit further than that. Hybrid is the halfway house. The end goal seems to be electric, and not just Dubai, not just the UAE, but governments around the world are looking, and manufacturers as well, are looking at taking their entire fleets and making more of the cars on the roads all electric. How long will that take? That's one of the questions we're asking. There have been concerns raised about electric cars. We're not alone in having those. We've heard, Vas, this morning from those who are very much in favour and those that still have some nagging doubts.
Yeah, loads of concerns about electrical cars, mostly because they feel that the ecosystem and the infrastructure is not yet there, that it obviously affects the amount of electricity that we're using, that batteries may fail in this heat. What do we do with, to dispose of batteries, the lithium that is in batteries? So still loads of concerns around really the greater discussion or the greater choice in choosing an electrical car over a regular car.
This one's from Kent out there this morning, saying, I don't understand the hype about electric cars, electric vehicles, I should say. Most of the people and media neglect the high environmental impact of lithium mining. Lithium mining is not better than copper mining and causes global warming and ecological toxicity. Nothing green about that. Now imagine a 1,000-fold increase. Kent, thanks.
James saying, with the environment in general, you need to make it easy, convenient and cheap, or people won't adopt better habits. And Dina saying, I applaud those who adopt this technology, but I think if you want to save the environment, then you need a full lifestyle that represents that. So recycling, solar, less waste, etc.
Talking of the environment, let's go to the lines. Line number 5. Good morning to Jasminka.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well indeed. Let's talk about the environment if we can. I know that you are passionate about the environment in which we live. Electrical vehicles, good thing or bad thing?
Certainly a way forward. There are still, it has been mentioned, infrastructure that needs to be implemented in order to make this technology even more environmentally friendly. Obviously, there are issues with recycling the batteries. There are not enough recycling locations to recycle such batteries. We also need to look at recycling not just the most valuable metals in the batteries, for example, nickel and cobalt and etc. We need to recycle lithium as well, as much as we can. As one of the callers suggested, lithium mining is also not environmentally friendly. So if we can recycle, obviously that would reduce the impact on the environment.
I mean, obviously, one of the concerns that's been raised here this morning is the fact that the very generation of electricity, of power here, invariably comes from the burning of fossil fuels or the consumption of fossil fuels that are inherent to this part of the world. Given the fact that this conversion will put more pressure on the electricity grid, is that something that concerns you? Do we need to think about the very source of our power and electricity?
Yes. Well, I guess in Dubai in particular, majority of electricity comes from gas, which is obviously a lot more cleaner way of getting energy than burning coal. But then again, there are a lot of other things that you can implement, solar panels and whatnot to source energy to drive such vehicles, which I presume a lot of battery charging stations in the future would have that as a source of electricity rather than a gas burning or coal burning. So there are a lot of things that I guess in future will be implemented in order to make this technology a lot more greener. Obviously at the moment we are at the infancy stage, so we need to look at all of these other technologies and put them in place in order to make this a step forward.
Yes, I mean, sometimes technology advances quicker than the infrastructure can keep up, especially in the region and in the world we live in at the moment, Jasminka. If you look forward, though, 3 to 5 years' time, is this something you will invest in? Is an electrical car on your list, do you think, in the future?
Oh, definitely. I would definitely love to have one. As indicated, I'm a big environmentalist, so everything that I do is around trying to make sure that we preserve what we've got and make sure that we leave this environment intact as much as we can for the future generations. So if technology is going to help us implement some of these measures to protect the environment to the level that we would like it, certainly I would definitely be investing into something like this.
They're very expensive though, aren't they?
They are certainly, but anything new on the market generally very expensive at the beginning, and generally there is a price reduction as the technologies become more available and more producers become available on the market. So I presume a lot of industries out there, automotive industries, are implementing these technologies. So over the next half a decade, we should see a lot more of these cars on the market.
Jess Minka, thanks very much indeed for sharing your opinions with us this morning.
Yep, pleasure.
A big thanks to all of our callers. If you'd like to be one of the contributors and callers, Aria's been in touch on the text saying electrical cars are efficient only if power generation is zero or low emissions process. Imagine the amount of electricity needed to charge all these cars. Seba's been in touch saying power generation at scale has always been a better footprint than the sum of the individual engines. Thanks for that.
Naresh saying most people can't afford these cars, and no name on this one, like the idea of electrical cars, and I know they're the future, but honestly, I love hearing the sound of my car, and the fuel here is still fairly cheap.
We'll get the thoughts of two Marios in just a few moments' time who've texted in on 4001. We'll also get more of your thoughts as well. And a question from Vast and I, despite wanting to be a font of all knowledge, I'm very much not, that's for sure. And every now and again we get a text message through that uses an anagram or a word that we just have no idea about. So somebody's texted in, there's no name with this one, and what we do, rather than just ignore it, is ask you, because you're much better versed on these subjects and these words and these terms. So somebody's texted in saying power generation at the station, including transmission lost, is much, much more efficient than ICE. ICE, please explain to us. We're at a bit of a loss on that one, aren't we? Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure it means something to do with electricity, but if you could spell it out for us. We need a better education on what ice actually means.
What is ice? And if anybody comes back...
It's water that freezes, no!
Saying it's frozen water... No. There will be repercussions.
Please explain ice in terms of electricity.
If anybody... There's always one. We're gonna get very Monty Python and things. There's always one. Who threw it? There's always one.
The Agenda
On Dubai Eye 103.8.
Stay one step ahead.
Listening to the Agenda on Dubai Eye. It's your morning phone-in right here on 103.8, so please do get involved in the conversation, 4001. If you'd like to have your say. Let's hear from the two Marios now. One Mario saying lithium batteries lose their efficiency plus 40 degrees Celsius. In this part of the world, they would require cooling, which in itself requires energy and brings the efficiency further down.
The other Mario saying keep in mind the issues surrounding base load, peak demand and off-peak demand. Fossil stations need to maintain the base load that is close to peak output of the station on a constant basis. At off-peak times, this production goes to waste. Battery loading at these times gives us 100% societal gain. A smart loading system that exploits this reality solves a lot of the generation concerns that we are currently raising. Mario, thank you for your insights.
What are the chances of that? Two Marios texting within seconds of each other into our system, unless it's just Mario who's
got two phones.
Yeah, multitasking and texting on two hands at one time.
It could be, and both addressing the issue about source generation.
This is from Mike out there. He's been in touch saying, I remember when plastic shopping bags were the environmentally friendly answer to using paper bags. Now we see how foolish that was. I fear jumping on the lithium battery bandwagon will prove to be just as foolhardy. Thank you for that. And Pankaj has come up with a suggestion as well. How about cars with solar panels on the roof for inner city travel for short distances? Interesting, Pankaj. Thank you very much indeed for that one. Which films have you been watching?
Let's go to the lines now and speak to Joel. Good morning, Joel.
Morning. Can I be called Mario? I want to be a Mario too.
You can be called anything you like.
I know, but there can never be too many Marios.
Mario's a good name, right?
I know. I feel a lot cooler just thinking about myself as
it's
a Mario.
It's a super name.
Well, Joel is a good name too. And as I understand it, Joel, you have several insights into the challenges around electrical vehicles. Share them with us. Well,
you guys have to be honest with you, you've kind of covered a lot of it. I mean, infrastructure and where's the energy coming from. I've been listening to the show and everybody's repeating a lot of the same things. So I'm going to my way of looking at it, I'm going to be honest, I'm not very environmental. I'm not particularly green. I've probably killed a dolphin this week. And without knowing it. And the reality is, I think a lot of people in the Emirates, their decisions are going to be based on finance. And like someone already said, gas is cheap here. I don't think an electric vehicle would get me to Abu Dhabi and back, or to Iraq and back. So I wouldn't be practical for me. A hybrid would, and I would consider getting a hybrid car. But when I go back to Canada, man, those guys are environmental. I think my parents have 13 different bins for recycling there, and it's very, very strict, the laws. You cannot throw away even food garbage. It has to be composted. And they're really, and petrol's super expensive. So everybody's pushed that is pushing the entire industry into electric. You know, I think someone was talking about the Emirates power consumption, mostly natural gas. I understood that they're going nuclear quite soon, or there's a nuclear plant supposed to be opening soon. I consider that clean power. I'm not sure if you guys do or not, but and I mean, obviously until it's not, until there's a problem. But I think once there's a nuclear plant here and we're getting most of our power from wind, solar, and nuclear, then yeah, electric cars might become more practical. Might be more. It would definitely. I think it was you that said earlier that it decentralizes pollution, takes it out of the city center and puts it into where the power plants are. So that's a positive thing, I guess. It's still a dirty. There's no clean, and there's really clean power yet. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Really interesting insights, Joel, especially your comparison between here and Canada. Obviously, Canada, a completely different environment, very outdoorsy, different conditions there, but how they, I don't want to use the word punish, but sort of push people to change their habits by making fuel expensive or fining you if you litter. Do you think we need more of that here? You know, making EVs cheaper, for instance, and pushing up the price of fuel, that will really see a dramatic change in our behavior here.
Well, I mean, you know, it works on several levels, whether it's, you know, regulation. I mean, if you even look, I know it's a change of subject, but if you look at smoking in Canada has fallen. Like, nobody smokes because they've raised the price to such an extreme. They've made it so inconvenient to do it that almost no one does it. And if gas gets so expensive and there are so many regulations on recycling and regulations, and basically, like, look at, I think they're talking about having a congestion tax in Vancouver, and that will change a lot as well. Suddenly driving your car downtown will have another fee. That's what I was saying. I'm not particularly environmental, but I'm driven by my finances. I will do what makes the most financial sense for me most of the time. Not to say that I'm going to just start throwing plastic water bottles into the ocean, but nonetheless, that's really what's driving me. So if gas got really expensive here, and then I'd have to start looking at a hybrid. I think right now that's where we're at. Hybrids make more sense to me because I can just stop and fill it up and keep going. I don't need to wait an hour or two to charge it.
But I wonder, Joe, if you bring up an interesting point there, which is the very concept of electric cars. Okay, we're seeing hybrid at the moment, but with the end game being electric cars, seem to be better suited for urban environments, which would be great for all those that live, work and play within the city of Dubai. However, if you live, work and play outside the city of Dubai and you are dependent on the desert either for your livelihood or your leisure, is electric going to work for you there when you need a little more grunt under the engine to get around, and obviously to be able to charge those cars is going to be more of a challenge. So I wonder whether we're seeing the sort of divide between the urban environment and a countryside environment that we see in other parts of the world already.
Well, I mean, let's look at a couple of different programs. That, like in Canada, they have something called Car to Go. I haven't seen that here, but it's like they have bicycle sharing here.
Yep.
And basically those cars are parked, and there's an app, and you can go and pick one up, and you have a card. And it's very convenient. So if you were to couple a car-sharing program with something like a Hyperloop or a Metro, where I could quickly walk in TCOM down to the Metro, jump or even walk to the end of my street, get a car to take me to the Metro station, leave it there, then go to Abu Dhabi, and the minute I walk out the door, there's a car for me to use. That would work quite well as well. And then suddenly all of that could be electric because I wouldn't have to go very far. I wouldn't have to return the vehicle if I didn't want to. I could just park it anywhere on the street and leave it there.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I think that we're in kind of a painful transition right now of hybrids. I think self-driving is going to be a big future thing. That's obviously a different subject as well, and that will change a lot. But we're not quite there yet because we haven't got clean enough energy to make it practical. And you guys have been talking about it all morning. The reality is that we're still burning natural gas, so we're just trading one fossil fuel for another.
Yeah.
Right. And that seems to, and like what you said, decentralizing it is good. I mean, certainly in a city like Hong Kong, getting gas out of the middle of the city, China's just like a fog. If they could reduce that and put it on the outskirts, it's better, but it's still not a solution.
Yeah,
not yet.
And it's interesting, and I think those are the solutions, the problems that are going to arise when you look at the pressure on a grid, not specifically here in the UAE, as you say, the conversion into nuclear energy is upon us at the moment, that's imminent, but you look at somewhere like Saudi Arabia where there is a large dependence on the oil. I think, what's the statistic I heard the other day? 25% of Saudi Arabia's oil is used in its desalination process, which is a huge amount of fuel when you think about it.
Yeah, but I mean, let's not use Saudi Arabia as a model for really anything. Okay. I mean, with all due respect, I appreciate. I think that we want to be looking more towards countries like Canada, Northern European countries that are more that have regulation, higher taxes, and are driving that industry in the right direction again through people's finances, pushing it where and that will be what ultimately happens is that it will just be cheaper to drive electric, and that will ultimately be the case. It's not going to be for a bit, but it's coming, I think. It
is coming, that's for sure. Joel, always good to catch up with you. Thanks very much indeed for your opinions today, and we'll certainly talk to you soon.
Sorry, it was Mario, actually.
Of course it is Super Mario. Quite right, too. Cheers, Mario. 4001 if you want to have your say. Joe's, Mario's, Joel's, whatever you want to throw at us this morning, we'll take them because the show is about opinions.
There's just so much more to hear.
Download our podcasts at DubaiI1038.com. Not had your Dubai Eye fill? Read our blogs to find out what happens behind the scenes. DubaiI1038.com.
Okie dokie, time to get back to a few more of your text messages this morning. A few of your comments and calls as well with regards to electric vehicles. Thanks very much indeed to all of you for having your say. This one's from Kareem saying one advantage of moving to electric is reducing the risk from transporting fuel on the roads to and from the gas stations.
Sammy saying I work at the EV charging systems. For 500 kilometers drive, a normal car will cost you 70 to 120 dirhams, whilst an electrical car will cost you 40 to 50 dirhams based on 0.32 AED per kilowatt. So in other words, Sammy's saying that EV saves you money.
Koza's been in touch saying we're already paying a high price in using fossil fuels. Thousands die yearly. Millions suffer from pollution and billions are spent in health costs. As for power to charge electric cars, electric companies have already researched this and find there's no problem that can't be handled. Total power consumption needs to be managed. Replacing a petrol car with an electric one results in reduced power consumption. You can confirm this anywhere you look. Thanks for that.
Lucas saying low fuel costs, no tax. Cars are fairly cheap. There is no incentive here whatsoever for people to change.
This one is from Hells, who says, someone who loathes driving but has to do so for my job, roll on the electric car revolution. Thank you very much indeed for that one. And thanks also to Paul, who's had his say, saying, well, wireless charging is only about 75 to 80% efficient and so loses up to 25% of the power on the way across the gap. Presumable the wind will be asked to blow harder to run the windmills and make up those losses.
And Thomas saying EVs are definitely better for the environment. The problem here is that cars and fuel are cheap, and even with incentives, EVs are still expensive.
This one's from Vina out there saying it's a complete waste of time. Until there's a viable working alternative, forget the electric idea. It's flawed from start to finish just to appease the green mafia is ridiculous. Thanks very much indeed for that.
Interesting point. Then Danny's saying, I'd like to buy an electrical car, but I'm going to wait until there are more options on the market to bring the price down. I do worry a bit that the batteries won't cope in the summer heat. Danny, we did speak to Ian Batesy a little bit earlier. He addressed the issues of batteries, and you can hear that full interview as a podcast on our website a bit later.
Thanks very much indeed to Crew as well, who's been in touch, taking me down memory lane a little bit, saying, Wouldn't this be a good time to try and revive the Sinclair C5? It's just as practical as electric cars are now. How about electric ships and electric planes? It will be a long time before the internal combustion engine is replaced. Do you remember the Sinclair C5? Oh. There will be few out there. I don't know how many of our listeners will remember the Sinclair C5. It was brought in. I think it was an Alan Sugar invention. Was it an Alan Sugar invention? I think he was certainly something to do with the launch of the Sinclair C5. It was, late 80s, early 90s maybe even at mid-80s, I'm not sure. It is a little pod car, electric car that was set to revolutionise the streets of London. It just almost like a cross between... like a sort of three-wheeler bike, which you sort of lie down in, but you drive around in a sort of in a white fiberglass pod, and it just went nowhere. They didn't sell any.
Oh, that's a
I
shame.
mean, that's forward thinking in the 80s that they tried to launch this. This is Lord Sugar, as in Alan Sugar.
Well, I think it was. I might be completely wrong on that. Someone will put me right, but it was the Sinclair C5. Do a little research on it when you get when you're a bit bored at your desk throughout the day, and just try and remind yourself of that. Or if you haven't seen it, again, it was somebody trying to bring electric vehicles to the fore, I suppose before their time. And it fell flat on its face.
Well, even just a few years ago, I mean, if we've read the biography of Elon Musk where they talk a lot about electrical vehicles, the world just wasn't ready for it. And this was just 4 years ago, before it's come to the market now and become so popular. There was a load of resistance. People didn't understand how it worked, how it would affect the environment. It's still a learning curve for a lot of us. And as we say, in the future, it'll be a norm, an everyday thing. But back then, just 4 years ago, it was like, what is this? How does this work?
Want more content?
For features, insight, reviews, and more news,
Check out DubaiI1038.com.
Talking electric cars this morning started by getting an automotive industry perspective with Ian Beattie, the General Manager of Autodata.
More and more electric vehicles are accessible, and especially the smaller versions, the more affordable versions. They've got to be more accessible to the general consumer and more affordable. What incentives can we put in place that are going to encourage somebody to buy an electric vehicle? And if I give you an example, if you buy a hybrid in Jordan, for example, there's zero tax. If you buy a combustion engine, it's 90% tax. So where else can we actually incentivise a consumer to buy an electric vehicle? Reduce registration fees, maybe no SALIC, hey, that would be a good one. And are they going to be cheaper to maintain, and do you have to maintain them more often or less often?
What about the environment and the concerns therein?
In Dubai in particular, majority of electricity comes from gas, which is obviously a lot more cleaner way of getting energy than burning coal. But then again, there are a lot of other things that you can implement, solar panels and whatnot to source energy to drive such vehicles, which I presume a lot of battery charging stations in the future would have that as a source of electricity rather than a gas burning or coal burning.
Thanks so much indeed for all your contributions. Final thoughts, Fasti?
We had loads of texts coming in on this one, Tom. It really got everyone going. Simon saying, if you care about the environment and the world your children live in, then you'll opt for a car that's most fuel and eco-friendly.
Big thanks to Vasti Khan for keeping us afloat today on all things electric vehicles. Thanks to Esther for taking your calls back at house this morning. Thanks to each and every one of you for your contributions. Thanks also for putting us right, whether it be ICE, the internal combustion engine, noted, or of course the Sinclair C5, which we were just talking about. Nothing to do with Sir Alan Sugar Urquhart, everything to do with Clive Sinclair, and as our listener says, it's in the name. Quite right too. That's it from us this morning. If there's a topic that is close to your heart that you'd like us to look into in more detail, both with the agenda and the ARN news team, do get in touch with us on Facebook. We're always very open to suggestions from you, the listeners. Till tomorrow, ta-ra.
there's just so much more to hear.
Download our podcasts at DubaiI1038.com.